Have you ever felt stuck on your spiritual journey? As if no matter how much you meditate, read, or practice, true growth remains just out of reach? The surprising truth is that the very habits you believe help you might be silently blocking your awakening and deeper connection to life. Have you ever noticed how the more you try to be spiritual, the further away you feel from your own growth? It's a strange, subtle phenomenon that so many seekers experience. You dedicate yourself to meditation, read every book you can find, attend workshops and retreats, and yet there's this persistent feeling that something essential is missing. You want to evolve, to awaken, to feel more connected, but somehow it never seems to arrive. The irony is almost painful. The very behaviors you believe are helping you are often the ones quietly blocking you. You see, spiritual growth is not a goal to achieve, a badge to earn, or a destination to reach. It's a process of uncovering what has always been present, peeling away the layers that have been hidden behind habits, conditioning, and illusions. And yet, so many of us act as if spirituality is something outside of ourselves, a series of steps to climb rather than a recognition of what is already here. The first behavior that blocks spiritual growth is over-identifying with the seeker. Many of us define ourselves entirely by our spiritual pursuit. I am a meditator. I am a yogi. I am awake. This may feel noble or inspiring, but it also traps you in a constant comparison with some imagined ideal. The mind continually measures itself against an internalized image of progress, creating a subtle tension, a sense of insufficiency, and a never-ending striving. The irony is that the seeker, the one who constantly judges, measures, and reaches for more, is the very energy that keeps you from recognizing what is already present. The seeker always believes something is missing, yet the moment it's recognized, the need to search dissolves. The seeker itself is the obstacle. The second behavior is collecting knowledge without experiencing it. Spiritual teachings, books, mantras, and workshops can be deeply inspiring, even life-changing. And yet, if your focus is only on accumulation, if the goal is simply to know more, knowledge becomes a subtle trap. You adorn yourself with words, concepts, and ideas, yet the living awareness that those teachings point to remains untouched. Think of it this way. You could read every book ever written about water. You could study it scientifically, memorize poetic descriptions, even lecture about its qualities. And yet, until you actually drink it, experience it on your tongue, and feel it flow down your throat, the understanding is incomplete. Spiritual growth works the same way. Direct experience matters far more than intellectual understanding. If your knowledge is simply decoration for the ego, it reinforces separation rather than dissolving it. The third subtle trap is measuring yourself by external spiritual milestones. Meditation streaks, retreats attended, teachings learned. These can all feel like proof of progress. But when you constantly check off milestones, you reinforce the illusion that spiritual growth is a linear path with markers along the way. Real awakening is not found in the number of retreats you attend or the number of techniques you master. It is found in the simplicity of being present, in recognizing awareness that has always existed beneath the surface. When you begin to see these habits clearly, without judgment, something remarkable happens. Awareness itself shifts, even slightly, and that shift is enough to loosen the grip of these blocks. Spiritual growth is not about adding more to yourself. It's about seeing through the habits that obscure the truth that is already here. Once the seeker is recognized, once knowledge is put in its proper place, and once milestones are no longer measuring rods of worth, the door to true growth opens just a little wider. The fourth behavior that blocks your spiritual growth is trying to eradicate your ego. This is perhaps the most seductive and deceptive trap of all because it feels noble, even enlightened. We've been taught through countless spiritual teachings that the ego is the source of suffering, the root of attachment, the barrier between us and true awakening. And so, with the best intentions, we wage war on it. We meditate rigorously, analyze our thoughts, deny desires, and attempt to transcend the self. Yet the very act of trying to eliminate the ego is itself an expression of ego. The self that wants to transcend itself is still a self, still caught in the same patterns, still searching for completion outside of the present moment. It's like trying to lift yourself off the ground by pulling up on your own bootstraps. You are using the problem to solve the problem, and the effort becomes a circular trap. When you declare war on your ego, you divide yourself internally. One part of you becomes the spiritual warrior, the disciplined seeker who is working diligently to overcome attachment, desire, and fear. The other part, the so-called ego, is now perceived as the enemy, something to suppress, control, or even annihilate. But suppression never works. What you push into the shadows doesn't disappear. It hides, festers, and often returns in ways far more powerful than before. Your unacknowledged thoughts, emotions, and desires influence your actions beneath the surface, subtly shaping your choices and reactions without your conscious awareness. In essence, you end up fighting yourself, and the internal conflict becomes a barrier to genuine growth. The fifth behavior is using spirituality as an escape from life. This habit is incredibly common, yet rarely recognized because it feels so spiritual. We retreat into meditation, mindfulness, or philosophical study to avoid confronting the complexities, pains, and responsibilities of daily life. We detach from relationships, avoid difficult emotions, and convince ourselves that we are evolving when, in reality, we are running. This is often called spiritual bypassing, the act of hiding from what is uncomfortable or challenging in the guise of higher consciousness. We tell ourselves that if we just meditate more, read more, or detach more, we'll somehow become immune to suffering. The paradox, however, is that true spiritual growth is not about escaping life, it is about fully inhabiting it, with all its messiness, contradictions, and intensity. True awakening places you more deeply into life, not above it. The sixth behavior is forming a spiritual identity. This is the subtle ego wearing a halo. You begin to define yourself by your spiritual achievements. I am awakened. I am conscious. I have transcended. Suddenly, your sense of self-worth depends on being recognized as more evolved than others. You compare yourself to those you perceive as less spiritual, and you feel a quiet pride in your superior understanding. While this might feel empowering, it is still a form of egoic attachment. Genuine growth is invisible. It doesn't seek validation, it doesn't boast, and it doesn't divide the world into enlightened and unenlightened. The moment you need others to recognize your spiritual identity, you are still caught in the very trap you sought to escape. Recognizing these behaviors is the first step toward true spiritual growth. The key is not to fight them, judge them, or feel guilty for having them. Awareness alone begins to dissolve their power. You start to see where seeking becomes separation, where striving becomes resistance, and where identification becomes limitation. And in that seeing, the door to authentic awakening quietly begins to open. The seventh behavior that blocks your spiritual growth is believing that understanding concepts equals awakening. This is one of the most common traps for anyone seriously engaged in spiritual practice. We read books, watch videos, attend workshops, and collect teachings, and we begin to think that simply knowing the right ideas or repeating the right mantras is the same as being awakened. But intellectual understanding is not the same as direct experience. You can memorize every teaching on non-duality, consciousness, or mindfulness, and quote them perfectly and still be completely asleep. You can hold all the right beliefs in your mind while your life is dominated by the same patterns, reactions, and attachments as before. The words themselves are not the awakening, they are signposts pointing toward it. Consider this. Someone can read endlessly about love, compassion, and patience, but until they actually encounter a difficult situation and respond with true empathy, their knowledge remains theoretical. The knowledge points the way, but it is not the path itself. Likewise, you may intellectually understand the impermanence of life, the illusion of control, or the futility of attachment, And yet, when life delivers pain, loss, or discomfort, your understanding may collapse. This is the difference between knowing and being. Awakening is a lived experience, a direct engagement with the present moment, a recognition that arises spontaneously when the mind stops projecting, judging, and grasping. It cannot be forced or willed into existence through thought alone. Another aspect of this trap is the constant analysis of your own spiritual state. We check ourselves. Am I awakened yet? Am I making progress? Did I understand that teaching correctly? This self-monitoring creates a subtle tension, a quiet pressure that keeps us in the mind instead of the heart, in judgment instead of presence. By measuring our spiritual growth against concepts and theories, we create a separation between who we are and what we seek. We reinforce the illusion that awakening is a future event, something to be earned rather than a recognition of what is already here. The seeker becomes the obstacle once again. The key here is to allow direct experience to speak for itself. Instead of collecting teachings like trophies, immerse yourself fully in whatever you are doing. If you meditate, be fully present with your breath and sensations, not the idea that meditation makes you more spiritual. If you interact with others, be fully present in the exchange, not judging it as good or bad, enlightened or unenlightened. Life itself becomes your teacher when you stop trying to intellectualize it. The moments that challenge, frustrate, or humble you are just as powerful as moments of peace or joy. Every experience is an opportunity to awaken if you are fully present and not lost in concepts. This is the subtle art of letting go. Letting go of needing to be right, needing to understand, needing to achieve, and instead allowing yourself to simply be here, fully alive, fully human, fully aware. The intellectual map is useful, but it is never the territory. Spiritual teachings are guides, not destinations. The moment you mistake the map for the territory, you block your own growth. Real awakening is effortless in its own way. It requires nothing but your attention, your presence, and your willingness to see what is, just as it is, without judgment, without attachment, and without expectation. After examining all these behaviors that subtly, yet powerfully, block your spiritual growth, the question arises, what is left when we strip away all the distractions, misconceptions, and habits that keep us from awakening? What remains when we release the need to achieve, to understand, to be someone or somewhere else? The answer is astonishingly simple, yet profoundly transformative. What remains is presence itself, the direct, unmediated experience of this moment. Not the idea of presence, not the thoughts about being spiritual, not the identity you've built around being awake, but the raw, undeniable awareness that is already here. This is the core of true spiritual growth, recognizing that you are not separate from the very thing you are seeking. When you stop chasing, forcing, or trying to manufacture awakening, you allow life to flow through you naturally. You stop measuring your experiences against spiritual ideals and instead start engaging fully with the reality in front of you. Every breath, every sensation, every encounter becomes a portal into awareness. You realize that growth is not about accumulation, achievement, or transcendence. It is about deepening your relationship with what already is. There is a subtle joy, a quiet clarity, a peace that arises not from the outside world, but from the recognition of your own intrinsic being. This is also where the paradox of awakening becomes clear. True spiritual growth does not demand effort in the conventional sense. The more you struggle to be spiritual, the more resistance you create. The more you try to force insight or enlightenment, the more you reinforce the very patterns that block it. Growth emerges not through doing, but through allowing. It arises when you stop clinging to concepts, identities, and ideas about how life should be, and instead embrace the flow of reality as it is. In this stillness, the veils of confusion gradually lift, and the simple truth becomes undeniable. You are already whole, already complete, already awake. Spiritual growth is not about becoming someone else. It is about seeing clearly who you are right now. It is about letting go of the need for validation, for recognition, and for comparison. It is about releasing the subtle chains of ego that disguise themselves as spiritual ambition, knowledge, or morality. When these habits fall away, you discover an effortless freedom. There is no striving, no competition, no pressure. There is simply being, and in that being, everything you have ever sought unfolds naturally. So let this be a reminder. Every behavior, every thought, every pattern that you have recognized as blocking your growth is not a failure. It is a mirror, reflecting the places where your attention has been misplaced. These habits are not enemies, they are invitations to deepen your awareness. And as you let go of them, moment by moment, breath by breath, you will notice a profound shift. Life no longer needs to be manipulated, controlled, or forced into spiritual ideals. Instead, life becomes your teacher, your practice, your meditation, and your awakening itself. The ultimate truth is simple. You are not separate from the awareness you seek. Spiritual growth is the gentle recognition of this truth. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to acquire, and nothing to fix. Every step, every habit, every revelation along the way is simply pointing you back to what is already present. Your growth is measured not by how far you reach, but by how deeply you allow yourself to rest in this moment, fully awake, fully alive, and fully at peace.